Welcome to Sunday School, 1 Corinthians 15, 3 through 5. For I delivered unto you first of all that which I also received, how that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he rose again the third day according to the Scripture, and that he was seen of Cephas, and then of the 12. On that same day, two of the followers of Jesus were walking out of Jerusalem to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles away. While they were talking over the strange happenings of that day, they saw that a stranger was walking beside them. It was Jesus, their risen Lord, but they held back from knowing him. The stranger said to them, "What words are these that you are speaking with each other, which seem to make you feel so sad?" One of the two men, named Clopas, answered, "Are you even a stranger in Jerusalem and have not heard of what things have taken place there in the last few days?" The stranger said, "What things?" And they said, "The things with regard to Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in his acts and his words before God and all the people, how the chief priests and our rulers caused him to be sentenced to death, and how he died on the cross. But we hoped that he was the promised one, who was to save Israel. And now it is the third day since he was put to death. And today some women of our company who were early at the tomb surprised us with the news that the tomb was empty. His body was not there. And they had seen a vision of angels who said that Jesus was alive. Then some of us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then the stranger said to them, "O foolish men, and slow of heart to believe what the prophets have said, was it not needful for the Christ to suffer these things and then to enter in his glory?" Then he began with the books of Moses and went through the prophets and showed them in all the scriptures the meaning of all that was told about Christ. And as they went on, they came to the village to which they were going, and he acted as though he would go on beyond it. And they urged him and persuaded him to stay with them. And they said, "Stay with us, for it is now almost evening, and the day is at its close." And he went in with them and sat down with them to supper. And they were about to eat. He took the loaf of bread into his hands, and blessed it, and broke it, and gave it to them. And at that moment their eyes were opened, and they knew that he was the Lord, and he passed out of their sight. They said to each other, "Was not our heart burning within us while he talked to us on the road, and while he opened to us the words of the Scriptures?" This was the third time that Jesus showed himself on that day. These two men hastened to Jerusalem that night to tell what they had seen. And they found 10 of the disciples met together and saying, "The Lord is risen indeed and has been seen by Simon Peter." We do not know what Jesus said to Peter, but this was the fourth time that he was seen living on that day when he arose. On that night 10 disciples and other followers of Jesus were together in a room, and the doors were shut. Suddenly Jesus himself was standing among them. He said, "Peace be unto you." Some of them were alarmed when they saw him and thought that he must be a spirit, but he said to them, "Why are you frightened, and why do fears come to you? Look at the wounds in my hands and my feet. Handle me and see. A spirit does not have flesh and bones as you see that I have." And he showed them his hands and his side. They could scarcely believe for the joy of seeing him again. He said, "Have you here anything to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish and some honey, and he ate them before them. And he said, "This is what I told you while I was with you, that everything written of me in the law of Moses and in the prophets and in the Psalms must come to pass. It was needful that Christ should suffer thus and should rise from the dead, and that everywhere the gospel should be preached in his name. I will send the promise of my Father upon you, but stay in Jerusalem after I leave you until the power shall come upon you from on high." Then when the disciples saw that it was really the Lord and that he was alive from the dead, they were glad. And Jesus said to them, "Peace be to you. As my Father has sent me, even so I send you. May the Spirit of God come upon you." And this was the 5th time that Jesus showed himself alive on that day. This Sunday was the brightest day in all the world, because on it Jesus rose from the dead. And that Sunday and every year is called Easter Sunday.